How well do you know Stephen Colbert? He was dubbed the most inventive comedian of his generation, the brightest and most creative mind. Stephen Colbert has changed the late-night show with wit, satire, seriousness, and intellectual curiosity. He has created a platform with an engaging audience and has been known for his fearless approach to tackling difficult topics. Today, we are set to reveal the truths about the talented mastermind of comedy. Ensure you watch this video till the end, as it contains events many don't know about. You've probably heard of Stephen Colbert, the comedian, satirist, writer, and television host. He was born on May 13, 1964, in Washington, D.C., and grew up alongside 10 other siblings. He lived in Bethesda, Maryland for most of his early years, but was later raised in the suburb of James Island, Charleston, South Carolina. Stephen and his siblings were heavily influenced by their parents, who believed and explained that it was possible to question the church and its doctrines but not lose their faith. Stephen Colbert's father was an immunologist interested in French humanist writers like Léon Bloy and Jacques Maritain. On the other hand, his mother was fond of Dorothy Day, the head of the Catholic worker movement. Stephen pointed out that there was a pattern since he grew up in the South. The Southerners were depicted as stupid on television. Determined not to give in to that stereotype, he learned to imitate American news anchors. This may have been the base of his growth in media awareness, representation, and ability to communicate effectively using his style of satire. If someone had told Stephen Colbert that at the age of 10, he would have experienced a loss that would make him sad, he probably would not believe it. But on the 11th day in September in the year 1974, his dad and two brothers, Peter and Paul, were in a plane that had a terrible crash. His brothers were en route with their father to get enrolled at the Canterbury School in New Milford, Connecticut. Picture how scary and sad that must have been for him. The Colberts were a very close family, so when Stephen lost his dad and brothers, the pain was very personal to him. He missed them and could not understand why that tragedy befell them. His mom, Lorna, attempted to comfort him and even tried to change their scenery, hoping that moving to a new place would change things. But things were rough for them, and death isn't just a memory you can wipe off with the snap of your fingers. Lorna relocated the family from James Island to the George Chisholm House in downtown Charleston and ran a bed and breakfast carriage house there. But Stephen never seemed to come to terms with how to live without his father and brothers. He found himself not fitting in with the other children his age in his new neighborhood, and had no friends who would play with him. This wasn't because he wasn't liked in the neighborhood. It was because he felt detached. Stephen was just a spectator to the things happening around him. But what helped Stephen get over the feeling of sadness he had at the time? As Stephen grew older, he quickly developed what is one of the biggest addictions for even the most avid fan: science fiction and fantasy novels. He was fascinated with the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, a fantasy author. However, Stephen's fascination with fantasy did not end with reading. He became interested in an outdoor military adventure game, Dungeons & Dragons, and wasted no time building characters, fighting monsters, and roaming in an entirely fictional world. I started playing Dungeons & Dragons the first week it was introduced to the market. At least the first week it was introduced down here, he revealed in an interview. This did not turn out so bad because role-playing these games helped him improve his acting and improvisation skills. But Stephen's talent wasn't confined to his room's walls. He attended the Charles Episcopal Porter God School, participating in several school plays and contributing to the school newspaper. However, even before role-playing, Stephen's initial intention was to become a marine biologist. The man wanted to make new explorations and discover new species and unknown information about the sea, but unfortunately, an acute ear condition ended all of these dreams. You would have thought maybe a little surgery would fix the issue. Yeah, right? But it got worse after the surgery. Before you knew what was happening, the surgery intended to fix his severely perforated eardrum caused him to have an inner ear injury and caused a permanent loss of hearing in his right ear. Who knows what might have happened if he studied marine biology? After high school, Stephen did not know if college would be the right place for him to go. But one day, he decided to do it and applied for Hamilton-Sydney College in Virginia, where a friend was studying. He began in 1982 and majored in philosophy while simultaneously pursuing acting through college plays. Even though there was zero interest in building a theater community at Hampton, Stephen's passion for acting increased. The following year, in 1984, Stephen transferred to Northwestern University after realizing he was good at acting and could make something out for himself. So, what opportunities lay for Stephen after his graduation in 1982? And what impact would it have on his acting career? If you want to find out, keep watching. Do you remember that he enjoyed acting and mostly performed in experimental plays while growing up? When he got to college, Stephen Colbert's dream was to become a dramatic actor and render a performance that would leave the audience crying their eyes out or laughing their sadness away. He wasn't even interested in comedy. But later on, he took an interest in improvisation. It's a make-believe with friends, but on a stage where you have to name a joke or come up with a funny story at the spur of the moment. Stephen joined the Improv No Fun Mud Piranhas and the Annoyance Theater in Chicago on campus, where he learned from Del Close. In those days, the theaters were mainly focused on competitive, long-form improvisation instead of comedy sketches. Let's take it slow, so you get a better picture. Stephen was involved in long-form improvisation, which focused on telling stories and developing the characters in your story, but in a funny way. The people at Annoyance Theater thought their jokes were more pure because of the process involved and looked down on Second City. This was because they did short-form improv and were more focused on quick jokes than telling a story and humor. This was why Stephen did not want to join the Second City. However, after Stephen completed college, he had to get a job. Fortunately, his friend got him a job at Second City, though it was only at the reception desk, taking calls and selling souvenirs. But guess what? He was privileged to learn classes there for free. Despite his opinion against Second City, Stephen signed up for improvisation classes and enjoyed the experience. At Second City, he was a substitute for comedian Steve Carroll, but soon he became part of their comedy touring team. Also, Stephen befriended two new people, Amy and Paul. Here's something you do not know. At first, when the three of them met, they were rivals and did not fancy each other's presence. Paul thought Stephen was too serious, and at the same time, Stephen imagined that Paul was an illiterate thug. But surprisingly, while traveling on the tour together, they realized they shared a similar sense of comedy. It was not long before Amy and Paul got lucky, and HBO Downtown Productions hired them to make a TV series. They invited Stephen to come to New York City to work on the sketch comedy show together. Stephen was excited, and they moved to New York City together. In New York, Stephen, Amy, and Paul put in extra effort to make the show. And later the show Exit 57 started airing at Comedy Central in 1995 and only produced 12 episodes up to 1996. Even though the program was short-lived, it had several reviews from those who saw it and was even nominated for 5 Cable Ace Awards in 1995. So what other project did Stephen Colbert work on after Exit 57? Exit 57 was a 30-minute sketch comedy series that aired for 20 minutes. Subsequently, the show was canceled, and Stephen Colbert joined the Dana Carvey Show alongside his former Second City castmates Steve Carell, Robert Smigel, Charlie Kaufman, and Louis C.K. The program was named Kamikaze Satire simply because it was bold and crazy. The viewers liked this show, however the sponsors did not, and the show was canceled after 7 episodes. After this, he wrote for Saturday Night Live with his friend Robert Smigel, and they made funny cartoons together. Stephen played the voice of Ace in the Dangerously Animated Gay Duo, an animated sketch Smigel brought from the Dana Carvey Show, while Steve Carell played the voice of Gary. To make ends meet, Stephen also used to write scripts for VON. Guess what? He got a filming job at Good Morning America. Unfortunately, only 2 of the segments he proposed were accepted, and only 1 was aired. This wasn't the end for Stephen because working on the project showed his agent just how good he was, and he decided to refer him to The Daily Show's producer, Madeline Smithberg, who hired him on a trial basis in 1997. Stephen got a job at The Daily Show, and at the same time he collaborated with Amy Sedaris and Paul Dinello to produce a new comedy called Strangers with Candy. Remember, they made Exit 57 together, and were sure to pull this off, which they did because Comedy Central liked their idea, and the series was taken up in 1988. Since Stephen was working at The Daily Show and was working on Strangers with Candy, he needed to balance both projects. To do that, he reduced his appearance on The Daily Show and filmed only around 20 segments a year. The show was an after-school special comedy that talked about the life of Jerry Blank, a 46-year-old high school dropout who decided to return to high school after living on the street for 32 years. Imagine being in school with kids when you're that old. Well, Jerry's story was quite different. She could not complete high school when she was young, so she returned to continue her education. Strangers with Candy was viral because of its bold humor. Every time Jerry wrapped up the episode in some way or another, after learning something that was not always productive, the show was just joking around, and it poked fun at the usual moral lessons that came after other after-school specials. Although the show did not gain popularity initially, it left a special mark on those who did not miss it. Everyone liked Jerry and her friends, and everyone would laugh at how ridiculous they were being. For others, the show was like a hidden gem with a few dedicated viewers. How did the group of three pull the show off? In an interview, Paul said they came up with other scenes after an outline. We'd come up with an overlying outline, and then we would improvise all these other scenes we need to get where we were going to start, and we'd know where we were going to end, and we'd build these other scenes we need to get there, and then we would sit in a room and improvise, and then we'd take down what made us laugh. Well, did Jerry ever graduate? The only answer we have to that is Paul's reply in the interview. Or they made her like a student emeritus or something where, after 8 or 9 years they just said, "Jerry Blank, you've graduated." Just to get rid of her. Give her some sort of honorary. It's like the same kind of degree that Bill Cosby has. She's an honorary graduate. Paul revealed. And that's it for the time at Strangers with Candy. So remember, we mentioned earlier that Stephen got the job with The Daily Show and had to film 20 segments with them a year. While at that, he was also among the 4 correspondents on The Daily Show who toured around the country doing a comedy piece on ridiculous stories while presenting it as a news report. He was called the New Man for the first 2 years there. However, this significantly changed in 1999 when the host, Craig Kilborn, left the show and Jon Stewart took over. The show then concentrated more on politics and became very popular during the 2000 American presidential election. There were more roles for Stephen and the other correspondents, and they began doing many more segments and international reports with green screens in the studio. Stephen gained popularity by doing humorous and fake serious journalism that made people laugh. But what was to happen with this new role he was performing? Stephen Colbert's job in The Daily Show was quite extraordinary. While Jon Stewart was hosting, writing, and co-producing the show, Stephen built an alter ego, playing a conservative TV show host like Bill O'Reilly. On the show, Stephen would also engage in interviews with knowledgeable people or find himself conversing with Jon Stewart, often pretending he did not know what was being discussed while employing comedy. Stephen Colbert perfected his charisma, and others like Rob Corddry and Asif Manvai admitted they mimicked his style when they started appearing on the show. Stephen Colbert was such a great influence on The Daily Show that he won 3 Emmys Awards as the show's writer in 2004, 2005, and 2006. When he filled in as an anchor in the absence of Jon Stewart, he still carried the show, and even months after he left, his pre-recorded voice was still used as the sound effect for the God Machine. With time, Stephen became a pro and hosted his television show. That was the vision from the start, and he made it his reality, The Colbert Report. This show aired from the 17th day in October 2005 through the 18th day in December 2014. But that's not all of it. Did you know that originally the show started as a joke on The Daily Show? It was shown in the ad segment of The Daily Show, but Stewart's Busboy Productions took an interest in it, developed it, and pitched it to Comedy Central. At the time, Comedy Central was already looking for ways to extend The Daily Show beyond half an hour, so this was like gold for them. And that was it. Central Comedy signed a long-term contract for the Colbert Report show within its first month on air. What made the Stephen Colbert Show stand out? The Colbert Report was an exaggerated and fictionalized version of Stephen Colbert's life. He was so good at never leaving character regardless of what was going on in the show, whether he was introducing a guest, reacting to breaking news, or working through unforeseen circumstances. The show even coined the word truthiness. Truthiness was used to describe what people felt was true, irrespective of whether it was true. The word was later voted Word of the Year by Merriam-Webster in 2006. The success of The Stephen Colbert Show eventually got him the role of host in The Late Show. On April 10, 2014, CBS announced in a press release that Stephen would succeed David Letterman as the host. During his tenure as the host of The Late Show, Stephen Colbert hosted the 69th Primetime Emmy Award, broadcast on September 17, 2017. Recently, he and Spartina signed a deal with CBS Studios, and together they have made programs like Tuning Out the News and Fairview. On August 30, 2023, Stephen Colbert and fellow talk show hosts Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers, Jimmy Kimmel, and John Oliver began hosting the comedy podcast Strike Force 5 to support their staff members out of work due to the Writers Guild of America strike at the time. What reviews were mostly expressed by fans concerning The Late Show? For instance, the ratings for The Late Show with Stephen Colbert received positive reviews after Donald Trump's presidential inauguration. As Trump took more and more of the public space, Stephen Colbert moved from portraying a sarcastic, ironizing persona to hosting real discussions for and about the White House. This change of tone helped Stephen Colbert access the emerging demand for informative and enlightening shows. The shift was unsurprising when considering Stephen Colbert's experience with the satirical show, The Colbert Report. His experience in The Daily Show television program also helped him go through complex topics with ease. Therefore, The Late Show became a show where the primary focus was on dialogue and featured guests who contributed knowledge about the events happening at that time. This change helped a lot to improve the view on the show and make it a more reputable source of news for analysis and opinions. With Stephen Colbert as the head of the show, The Late Show established its place on essential shows for political discussions. Stephen Colbert likewise adapts to the different shifts in time, and this is what helped him retain his audience. According to James Poniwazik of the New York Times, Stephen Colbert has altered his comedic approach since moving to network television. However, his comedy changed in style towards a more consciously provocative one in the face of the Trump presidency. With this shift, Stephen Colbert has retained his style of humor as he embraced the new order. He also noted that Trump's administration made it possible for Stephen to incorporate his old style with his new approach and has made the word truthiness an American official language. Mr. Colbert's comedy hasn't become radically different, but it has been more frank and caustic. The network TV, Mr. Colbert, is cheery than his cable character, but it's as if the Trump administration had solved the problem of reconciling his new comedy with his old by making truthiness America's official language, he said. In a profile made by the Wall Street Journal on Stephen Colbert, actor Andrew Garfield pointed to Stephen Colbert's ability to address sensitive issues such as grief while persuading his guests to open up about it. This talent enables the audience to feel and associate themselves in some relational manner. Garfield also pointed out that the show is very sincere and a service to the public. He even half-seriously recommended that Colbert may have been better off as a priest. The openness and ownership that he has with seemingly culturally taboo subjects such as grief allows his guests permission to be in contact and reveal those aspects of their own selves and experiences. In turn, the audience gets to have a genuine, deep, and connected experience. So the show feels like an act of service to people. I think Stephen would have made a great priest. It is obvious now that Stephen Colbert changed the face of the late-night show. He has reinvented himself. Indeed, the show is now entirely his own. Whether using humor or actual talk shows, Stephen Colbert has provided a means to interact with the public. He resolved to cover sensitive issues and quickly became one of the most influential opinion givers in the media. From The Dana Carvey Show to Strangers with Candy, The Daily Show, The Colbert Report Show, and The Late Show, we have seen Stephen's personal success. But what lay behind the scenes of his personal wins? Let's take a look at his personal life. Stephen Colbert is a religious man, a Roman Catholic who used to give classes to children in Sunday school. This demonstrates how much his faith plays a role in his everyday existence. Remember we mentioned in the beginning Stephen took an interest in books? He still is a man who enjoys reading. Some of his favorite authors are J.R.R. Tolkien, J.D. Salinger, Isaac Asimov, Robertson Davies, George Saunders, Larry Niven, and Kuttner Henry. His influence comes from most of his science fiction, fantasy, and even classic literature. Aside from his love for books and being a humor-filled character on screen, Stephen Colbert is a happy man with a family filled with love. This is not only because of his wonderful wife Evelyn Evie McGee Colbert, but because they have had a long-standing relationship since their marriage in 1993. Evie is the daughter of the prominent Charleston civil litigator Joseph McGee, but there is more to Evie than being the daughter of a very skilled lawyer. She can also act. Many of you will remember her guest appearance with Stephen in Strangers with Candy, where she portrayed his mother. If Evie's beautiful face doesn't ring a bell, try The Nurse's Station, where she makes a cameo in the series pilot, or as Stephen's wife, Claire. Of course, as we usually see in romantic movies, Stephen and Evie are obsessed with each other. They first crossed paths in 1990 when he was involved with the Spoleto Festival USA in Charleston. Evie remembered meeting Jon Stewart before getting to know Stephen. That was love at first sight, according to Stephen. Moments after they met, they realized they had grown up together in Charleston and had many common friends. If that isn't fate and destiny, what else would we term it? Evie also appeared on The Late Show on their 30th anniversary, and Stephen introduced her as his lovely wife so that you could feel the intimacy and connection through the screen. He talked about her interest in hiking and mentioned that he wanted to go with her to Lebanon, not because he loves hiking, but because he loves her. When asked about the most romantic thing he loves about his wife in an interview, he replied, "How many do you want?" That is hard because everything about Evie is romantic. That shows just how much love he has for his wife. As we discussed earlier, Stephen Colbert did not lack challenges along his way to success, and even while growing up, PTSD and depression were a major theme of his life. Unknown to his fans, during his college and time in Second City, Stephen's struggle with depression and anxiety needed medication to deal with it. He said in 2018 interviews he had with Rolling Stone, "I needed to be medicated when I was younger to deal with my anxiety that I had thrown my life away by attempting to do something that so few people get away with or succeed at." Stephen revealed that he always tried Xanax for a while. Xanax was just lovely, for a while. And then I realized that the gears were still smoking. I just couldn't hear them anymore, but I could feel them. I could feel the gearbox heating up and smoke pouring out of me. I stopped the Xanax after like 9 days. I went, "This isn't helping," so I just suffered through it. I'd sometimes hold the bottle like, I could stop this feeling if I wanted, but I'm not going to. Because I know if I stop the feeling, somehow I'm not working through it, like I have to go through the tunnel with the spiders in it. Then one morning, Stephen woke up to realize he was feeling better. And then one morning I woke up, and my skin wasn't on fire, and it took me a while to figure out what it was. I wake up the next morning and perfectly fine, to the point where my body's still humming. I'm a bell that's been rung so hard that I can still feel myself vibrating, but the actual sound was gone because I was starting rehearsal that day to create a new show, and then I went, "Oh my God, I can never stop performing." Creating something helped me from just spinning apart like an unweighted flywheel, and I haven't stopped since. Stephen Colbert has also been busy attending to personal health issues for several years. He later came public in 2020 to share that he had been diagnosed with benign paroxysmal positional vertigo, a balance disorder. And as always, he joked about his situation. "It's almost entertaining until I forget, and then I go to stand up and then I just fall." Stephen Colbert was also not spared by the COVID-19 pandemic. He conducted a test on April 2022 after a few weeks of recurring symptoms, which shut down The Late Show briefly. However, Stephen Colbert was hospitalized in October of 2023 when he tested positive for COVID for the second time. That's not the only health issue he has faced since then. Stephen Colbert had a ruptured appendix that saw him rush to the hospital on November 23 when performing a live show on The Late Show. The live show was then temporarily canceled as he had to go for surgery, and we had to wait while he recovered. In his later interview, Stephen Colbert revealed that his pain got worse when chef Jose Andres grabbed him for an impromptu dance during a cooking segment on the show. Luckily, Stephen Colbert got well and was back on The Late Show on December 11, 2023. Another thing his fans would remember him for is his endurance and capacity to create humor out of a bad event. Stephen has gone on to host popular celebrities like Jessie, who played Eloise in Bridgerton, Stephen Curry, the American Olympic gold medalist, and the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and several others. Even if you hate humor, it is impossible not to acknowledge the incredible story of Stephen Colbert. His strength and ability to make people laugh throughout all these years originated in Charleston and has continued with The Late Night Show. Thanks to his wife Evie and their 3 children's support, Stephen Colbert has translated his life experience through humor and connected with people through meaningful dialogues. In whatever capacity Stephen Colbert will continue to contribute to society, the audience adores him as a media figure who has remained gracious, enlightening, and humorous. What can you say about Stephen's life? Feel free to share your mind in the comment section below. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Before you go, click on the video displayed on your screen.